Greetings and welcome, Amash, and this is my review for Battlefleet Gothic Armada, an incredibly faithful adaptation of the Warhammer 40k universe. A notion that doesn't sound very impressive until you notice the mountain of corpses from former games that have attempted and failed miserably to capture even a sliver of the grim cheesiness that permeates the universe and its inhabitants. When it comes to pleasing fans, Battlefleet Gothic has it all. Over-the-top weaponry fitted on equally titanic ships, characters that are only capable of talking by yelling ominously at each other, a plot that threatens the destruction of everything humanity holds dear, casualties spanning in the billions, and most importantly, factions that perfectly represent both their lore and combat style, which in the case of orcs means yelling, shooting, and literally launching themselves inside torpedoes in order to get to the action as quickly as possible. But even when you ignore all the Warhammer 40k elements, Battlefleet Gothic is still one of the most interesting strategy games I've played in recent years, simply because it manages to make each of its 10-minute long matches feel unique and explosive, and I don't just say that because my ships tend to spontaneously ignite due to the crew being a bunch of bloodthirsty but still lovable morons. The main reason I find the battles so compelling is the customization system, which allows you to specialize your ships in a variety of ways, all of which play similarly enough to not be confusing, but also distinctly enough to offer a completely different way of handling any situation. For example, if I ever get bored of playing with a standard Imperial loadout that focuses on heavy frontal armor and powerful broadside attacks, I can invest some resources into swapping around weaponry to create a fleet of fast-moving carrier ships that prefer to attack indirectly through the use of bombers and boarding parties. Best of all, you're actually incentivized to take good care of your ships because having them destroyed or heavily damaged comes with a massive downside. You either have to wait 2 in-game turns, which in the campaign can sometimes mean 3+ battles, or spend even more of your hard-earned currency in order to get your expensive ships back into the action as soon as possible. It might seem insignificant on paper, but after being forced to take good care of my ships, I started forming a real bond with them and would actually get vindictive if someone dared focus my longest lasting battleship, the Emperor's Faithful. Is it petty and somewhat sad? Probably, but it's also incredibly fun when you get yourself immersed into the battle. With plenty of diverging playstyles available, there is a need for good controls, and for the most part Battlefleet Gothic does an exemplary job at it. Once you get used to how everything functions, and stop forgetting that the spacebar slows down time for a brief period, you'll be able to focus entirely on the combat maneuvers, well-timed use of abilities, and most importantly, panning and zooming in order to catch the perfect shot of your ship ramming the enemies into the next dimension. The one thing I regret not seeing is the ability to divert shield power to various parts of the ship, not for any balance reasons mind you, but rather because Picard made it look so damn fun. There is an issue with the controls however, and it stems from the fact that the bottom left menu is almost always used once at the start of the round to set up your optimal engagement range, choose if your ships are going to focus on firing from the broadside macro cannons or frontal lances, and then almost never again. Once you choose a certain set of options, they should become the default for that ship, rather than something you have to change every single match, because let's face it, when are you ever going to play without your ship's optimal firing setup? It is a small issue, I'm aware, but it's one of those that can lose you a round because you forgot to tick the option to make sure your ships follow the enemy while filling them with plasma. That niggling little annoyance aside, the battles have one immensely important factor working in their favor. They're really fun. With solid controls, plenty of customization, and dozens of ships on each side, it's hard not to hear your inner 10-year-old giggle as he smashes 2 ships together while making shrieking noises best not uttered by mortal men. Do keep in mind that the combat isn't brainless, however, and if you simply charge at your enemies, you'll find yourself either speeding towards landmines or completely surrounded and decimated via torpedoes. Use of actual tactics and maneuvering will be required of you, especially if you play against some of the harder computer opponents or simply against any player that knows what they're doing. Unfortunately, this is where the balancing issues come into play to ruin everyone's fun, but luckily there doesn't seem to be that many of them. The prime example of this is how unfair the early matchup between Orcs and Eldar really is. Orcs have slow, heavily armored ships designed to ram the enemy and then follow up the assault with their inaccurate guns and strong boarding parties. The Eldar on the other hand have fragile ships focused around avoiding the enemy, attacking from afar, and using bursts of speed to dodge out of the way whenever they're being fired upon. What this means in multiplayer is unless you have a very specific loadout of orc ships, you're going to be endlessly chasing against some Eldar that just won't bloody stand and fight, even if they are destined to lose eventually, thus wasting everyone's time for no reason. I will fully admit this might just be me being relatively inexperienced, but there do seem to be a couple of these issues where battles end up slowing down to a crawl if one party realizes they can simply bore the opposition to death. If you can't be bothered with multiplayer, there's no need to worry, as you can replicate the same experience by playing against the AI on harder difficulty settings, or you can just go for the single player campaign, which is surprisingly good given the story material it had to work with. The story is completely cheesy and melodramatic, there is no hiding from that, but it's that special sort of Warhammer 40k cheesiness that fans will appreciate, especially since the voice acting and tone are spot on throughout its entirety. While the ships and upgrades are mostly identical between modes, there is a far greater variety of missions when it comes to the campaign, with some of them set up in such an interesting way I'm puzzled they're not actually available in multiplayer. Not everything is perfect, however, as there are a couple of missions that are almost impossible if you're playing on the harder difficulty, with my most aggravating example belonging to the planetary bombardment mission. The idea of supporting a ground invasion through bombardment is a great one, but giving you only 1 minute to traverse the entire map is just madness. And even with the fastest ships in the entire fleet, it can sometimes be impossible to actually complete. Especially when the hard AI knows your flaw and just focuses down your fastest and weakest ships first. Losing these sort of missions might feel incredibly unfair, especially since there are real consequences both on the world map and in your treasury, but nonetheless, I urge you to avoid saves coming. Every single important mission will give you a couple of opportunities to salvage the situation, and even if you fail miserably and give the enemy advantage, it won't mean the game is over. On the contrary, you will actually get unique cinematics that cover the consequences of your loss. There is no better feeling than that moment when you finally turn the tides and start winning, the moment where your ships completely crush the opposition, despite them having fierce warp storms on their side, the moment where the characters finally start believing victory is once again possible. I understand this is all a bit cliché, but this is Warhammer 40k we're talking about. Crushing defeats are to be expected and are almost always a prelude to future heroics. So don't rob yourselves the opportunity to create a unique and personal story, it's where half the fun lies. Then again, that's just my opinion, and if you feel you can't have fun without perfecting every single match, then the option is always available. Battlefleet Gothic Armada is a great RTS, but more importantly, it is a great Warhammer 40k game. It has managed to not just capture the look and feel of the universe, but also use its key elements and lore to further enhance the gameplay and make the whole thing an immensely enjoyable experience. It is not without its flaws or annoying bugbears, but as far as gameplay mechanics and variety goes, Battlefleet Gothic Armada stands on solid ground, despite floating through space. If you're a fan of Warhammer 40k or RTS games in general, it is well worth checking out, cause it might just be the game you were waiting for. Thank you guys for listening, and if you enjoyed this, or even if you didn't, please do let me know, and if you would like to see more, you can either subscribe here, or you can check out the website link down below. That one tends to be updated a lot more frequently. With all of that said, I hope you guys have a nice day, and I will see you soon. See ya!